Now, the next funding opportunity are assistantships. And you might ask, what are assistantships? Well, assistantships are nothing but university employment positions that are usually reserved for graduate students. Now, I'll have to preface that there might be some universities out there in the US that have assistantship positions for undergraduates, but typically assistantships are reserved for graduate students. Now, the type of assistantship you might have will depend on the nature of your job responsibility. For example, if you have a responsibility that's research-based, then you're going to get what's called a research assistantship, and you would hold a job title in the university called a graduate research assistant, or in some cases, it might be an undergraduate research assistant. Another form of assistantship you might have is when you have a teaching responsibility. Now, the nature of your job could be you holding office hours after a professor's lectures, or it could be you grading exams and grading tests for a university professor. In such a position, you work as a teaching assistant, and those types of assistantships are called teaching assistantships. Now, in some cases, you might have a job responsibility that's neither based on teaching or based on research. Now, those types of job positions are called administrative assistantships, and you might hold a job title as an administrative assistant. So those are the three common assistantships that you might have as a prospective international student coming to the US. It's either going to be a TA, which is a teaching assistant, or it's going to be an RA, which is a research assistant, or it might be an AA, which is an administrative assistant. So how do you get an assistantship? Well, that's going to depend on the type of assistantship in question. If it's a teaching assistantship or an administrative assistantship, those types of assistantships are given out at the departmental level or at the program level. While in the case of research assistantships, those are given out at the professorship level. While for the case of a research assistantship, you would have to collaborate directly with a professor who has the availability of research funds to support your graduate education in the form of a research assistantship. Now, in most of these assistantship positions, you'll be expected to work for at least 20 hours every week while school is in session, and under the scenarios where school is not in session, you might be able to work for more than 20 hours per week. So now let's talk about the type of coverage that you can get as an international student who receives an assistantship. Now, across many US universities, graduate students who receive assistantships get a significant portion of their tuition and fees reduced through what's called a tuition reduction program. Now, the amount you would get in tuition reduction would vary from school to school, but in many cases, you can expect to get about 75% of your tuition waived simply because you are an employee of the university. And as you can expect, because you work as an employee of the university, you're also going to receive a wage as compensation for your services. Now, the amount of compensation you would receive in your assistantship position will depend on several factors, one of which is the location of the university. Another important factor that would affect the amount of your compensation is the university program to which you're working in an assistantship position. For example, within the same university, assistantship positions in the sciences and the engineering majors make more money than assistantships in the arts and the education majors. Now, it's also important to discuss the duration of your assistantship. Now, in many cases, your assistantship is going to be given on a rolling basis. Now, this means that the length of your employment in an assistantship position doesn't go beyond the semester. And at the end of every semester, you would have to get another assistantship position to work in the preceding semester. So unless it's otherwise stated, you're not going to have a guaranteed assistantship position for more than one semester at a time. So how difficult is it to get an assistantship as an international student? Well, I like to think that the competition level for assistantships is somewhat moderate when compared to those of scholarships and fellowships. And I say it is moderate because across many public and private research universities in the US, about 70% of the incoming graduate student class receive assistantships. Now, as for when you can get an assistantship, many assistantships are given to incoming students at the time they are given an offer of admission to join the university program. This could be either in the form of teaching assistantships or administrative assistantships. But just because you don't get an assistantship at the time you're accepted into a university program that doesn't mean that you don't have any chances of ever receiving an assistantship, as you can always get an assistantship anytime after you've enrolled in the university's graduate program. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the wage you receive as an employee of the university will be paid out on a monthly basis, or in some universities, it could be paid out on a bi-weekly basis. So that is something to keep in mind when you plan your finances with an assistantship. So let's talk about some benefits of assistantships. Well, the first benefit you get with an assistantship is that it's a great opportunity to receive work experience. Now, if you're working in a research assistantship, the work you do during your research could be used as part of your curriculum to support your PhD thesis or to support your master's thesis. Another common benefit that comes with assistantships across many US universities is that because you're considered an employee of the university, you're also qualified to receive the same benefits that other employees of the university, such as the faculty and the staff, receive. For example, you might be eligible to join the university's health insurance program, and you could also be eligible to participate in the university's retirement savings program that's normally reserved for the faculty and staff working in the university. Now, keep in mind that you only receive this benefit while you're actively employed in an assistantship position. The moment you lose your assistantship position, you lose these benefits. But it's also important to point out here the caveat of assistantship. Now, the catch with assistantships is that because you work in an employee position, you have to maintain a satisfactory performance on your job at all times. Something else that could be challenging with assistantships is that regardless of how demanding your assistantship position is, you must satisfy your academic requirements as a graduate student. And across many US universities, graduate students must not have a GPA that falls below a 3.0. That's a B average. And in some circumstances, this might be challenging to some graduate students who have to maintain their GPA above a 3.0. And on top of that, they have to satisfy the research that's required to meet their PhD or their master's program. And on top of that, they must work for 20 hours a week in a TA position. Now, the catch with assistantships is that because you work as a university employee, you are required to have a satisfactory performance on your job, and if you fail to perform, you stand the chance of losing your assistantship, which means that you will lose all the benefits that come with your assistantship.